The smell of pine sawdust usually settles my nerves, grounds me. It's the smell of honest work, of transforming rough lumber into something solid, something beautiful. But not tonight. Tonight, the familiar scent just hangs heavy in the air of my workshop, mingling with the acrid taste of betrayal in the back of my throat. My calloused hands, hands that know the feel of every grain, every knot, are clenched uselessly in my lap. Because the screen glowing on the workbench in front of me doesn't lie. It shows a map, a little blue dot marking the location of the 2018 Honda Civic I bought for my wife, Lisa. And for the 6th Wednesday night in a row, tracking back through weeks of data that makes my stomach heave, that blue dot is sitting stubbornly, undeniably, at the same residential address over in Milwaukee's Bayview neighborhood. An address miles away from the yoga studio she supposedly attends every Wednesday evening. An address I now know belongs to a man I've never met. My name is Paul Erickson. I'm 56 years old. For most of my adult life, I've run Erickson Custom Woodworks out of this shop behind my house, here on the outskirts of Milwaukee. It's not glamorous, not corporate. It's just me, my tools, and the wood. I build kitchen cabinets fine enough to last generations, bookcases sturdy enough to hold a lifetime of stories, custom furniture people cherish. It requires patience, precision, an eye for detail, and a fundamental honesty with the material. You can't rush good work. You can't fake quality. I thought I'd built my life, my 15-year marriage to Lisa, on the same principles. Turns out the joinery was rotten clear through. Lisa came into my life like someone younger, looking for stability. I was nearly 40, established in my craft, maybe a little set in my ways. She was in her late 20s, working temp jobs, unsure of her direction, maybe a bit overwhelmed by the world. There was a sweetness about her, a vulnerability that pulled at me. I'd always been the steady type, the provider, the fixer. And Lisa seemed like someone who needed fixing? No, that's not fair. Someone who needed grounding. Someone I could build a life for, a life around. The age difference felt significant then, maybe less so as years passed. But the dynamic was set early. I was the anchor, the protector. She brought youth, light, a certain sparkle into my quiet, sawdust-filled world. We married, settled into the small brick house my grandfather built, the one attached to this workshop. Life was good, steady. My business provided a comfortable, if not extravagant, living. Lisa worked various part-time jobs, receptionist, retail clerk, nothing she ever seemed passionate about, but it gave her pocket money something to do. I handled the mortgage, paid off now, the major bills. It seemed balanced. Unequal, maybe, in earning power, but balanced in effort, or so I convinced myself. I worked long hours in the shop. She kept the house running, made dinner, comfortable, predictable, safe, the driving thing. That came up about 3 years ago. Lisa had never gotten her license as a teenager. She relied on me, the bus system, or occasional rides from friends. As Milwaukee grew, as her part-time jobs required more flexibility, the lack of a license became a bigger hindrance, a source of frustration for her. She talked about wanting more independence, the freedom to just go. "I feel trapped sometimes, Paul," she'd confessed one evening, looking genuinely distressed. "Like I always have to plan around your schedule or the bus timetable. I wish I could just drive myself." Seeing that vulnerability, wanting to empower her, wanting her to be happy, I offered to teach her. I underestimated the undertaking. Lisa was nervous behind the wheel. Terrified, actually. Braked too hard, took corners wide enough to take out a mailbox, stalled the old beater car I used for lumber runs countless times. But I was patient. God, I was patient. We spent hours, nearly every weekend for months in the empty parking lot of the local community college, sweating through muggy summer afternoons, shivering in the biting Wisconsin fall wind. Me, calmly talking her through parallel parking for the 15th time. Her, gripping the steering wheel with white knuckles, sometimes near tears of frustration. There were moments I wanted to give up. But then she'd have a small breakthrough, a smooth start on a hill, finally mastering the three-point turn, and her face would light up with such genuine pride, such relief, that it felt worth it. It felt like we were accomplishing something together, building her confidence block by block. When she finally passed her road test on the third try, she practically floated back to the car, waving the temporary license like a winning lottery ticket. The hug she gave me then felt real, full of gratitude and shared victory. The next logical step, of course, was a car. My old lumber hauling car wasn't suitable for her daily use. She started talking about job opportunities that were easier to reach with her own transportation, about visiting her sister in Madison more easily, about just being able to run errands without coordinating with me. The desire for her own wheels became her focus. We weren't rolling in money. Custom woodworking pays the bills, but it's not a gold mine. Buying a reliable used car was a significant expense. It meant me taking on a couple of extra big cabinet commissions, working late nights and weekends in the shop for several months, putting off buying that new table saw I desperately needed. I dipped into my personal savings, the buffer I kept for emergencies or slow business months. But seeing Lisa's hopeful face, imagining her newfound freedom, her ability to navigate the world independently, it felt like the right thing to do. A tangible investment in her happiness, in our future, freeing her from the constraints she felt. We found it after weeks of searching, a clean, low-mileage 2018 Honda Civic. Deep blue, practical, reliable, safe. Perfect. I handled the negotiation, paid cash from the money I'd scrimped and saved. The day I drove it home and parked it in the driveway, with a big red bow stuck clumsily on the hood, my attempt at dramatic flair, her reaction seemed worth every extra hour I'd spent sanding and finishing cabinets. She cried. Genuine-looking tears of joy streamed down her face as I handed her the keys. She threw her arms around me, burying her face in my chest. "Oh, Paul, thank you, thank you. I can't believe it. You're the most wonderful man in the world. This changes everything. I finally feel free. Free." That was the word she used. And for a while, it seemed true. She got a slightly better part-time job at a library branch across town, something she couldn't have managed easily with the bus. She joined a book club, started talking about maybe taking a pottery class. She seemed lighter, happier. I felt proud, like I genuinely helped unlock a new chapter for her. The shift was subtle at first. Hard to pinpoint when the gratitude faded and something else crept in. She started going out more in the evenings. The book club met Tuesday nights. Fair enough. Then she added a Wednesday night yoga class across town. "Gotta stay flexible, honey," she chirped. Then Friday evenings were often drinks with the girls from the library. Her social life suddenly seemed busier than mine. I didn't think much of it initially. She deserved her freedom, her own life. That was the whole point of the car, right? But then, little inconsistencies started nagging at me. The mileage on the Civic seemed to be climbing faster than her commute and stated social activities would suggest. She became incredibly protective of her phone, always keeping its screen down, angling it away if a text came in while I was nearby. Casual questions about her evenings out were sometimes met with defensiveness. "Why? Are you checking up on me, Paul?" Or vague answers. "Oh, yoga ran late. We just lost track of time chatting. Once I mentioned that my buddy Frank thought he saw her car parked near Brady Street on a Wednesday night when her yoga class was supposedly way over in Wauwatosa. She'd bristled immediately. Frank must be mistaken. Or maybe I stopped for gas. Honestly, Paul, sometimes I feel like you don't trust me. The accusation, flipping it back on me, stung. Maybe I was being overly suspicious. Maybe the age gap was making me insecure now that she had more independence. I tried to push the doubts away, but they kept creeping back, insidious and persistent. The Wednesday night yoga class became a fixed point of unease. She always seemed slightly different when she came home those nights. A little flushed, a little distant, sometimes overly affectionate, sometimes strangely irritable. And she always showered immediately, even if it was late. It didn't feel right. The discrepancy between the woman who sobbed with gratitude for the car and the woman who now seemed secretive and defensive about where she took it. It created a cognitive dissonance I couldn't ignore. The need to know, to confirm or deny the ugly suspicion growing in my gut, became overwhelming. The decision to buy the GPS tracker felt like crossing a line, betraying the very trust I was questioning. I ordered it online, a small magnetic battery-powered unit, feeling like a creep. When it arrived, I held the anonymous black box in my hand, the weight of its purpose heavy. Was I really going to do this? Spy on my own wife? Use technology to probe the hidden corners of our life? It felt like admitting defeat, acknowledging that direct conversation, honesty, trust, had all failed. But the alternative, living with the constant gnawing uncertainty, the suspicion poisoning every interaction, felt worse. I needed proof or disproof. I needed the truth, however ugly. One cold Tuesday night, while Lisa was supposedly at her book club, a meeting I now questioned, I took a flashlight out to the dark driveway. My hands shook as I found a discreet spot under the rear bumper of the blue Civic, wiped away the road grime, and felt the magnet click firmly onto the metal frame. A small, silent betrayal, committed under the cover of darkness. I felt sick to my stomach. The next day, Wednesday, was torture. I tried to work in the shop, but my focus was shot. Every buzz of my phone made me jump. I kept picturing Lisa getting ready for her yoga class, grabbing the keys to the car I bought her, driving off into the evening, unknowingly carrying my silent electronic witness with her. Around 6:30 p.m., she called out a cheerful, "Bye, honey, heading to yoga. Won't be too late." The casualness of the lie, if it was a lie, was chilling. I waited until 7 p.m., giving her time to supposedly get to the class. Then, with trembling fingers, I opened the tracking app on my workshop computer. My heart hammered against my ribs. The app located the device. A map of Milwaukee filled the screen, a small blue dot pulsing steadily. It wasn't anywhere near the yoga studio in Wauwatosa. It was heading south, towards the Bayview neighborhood. I watched, mesmerized and horrified, as the blue dot moved through familiar streets, finally stopping on a residential block I didn't recognize, several miles from where she claimed to be. And there it stayed. 7:15 p.m., 7:30 p.m., 8 p.m., 8:30 p.m., 9 p.m. The dot remained stubbornly fixed at that same address. Yoga classes usually last an hour, maybe 90 minutes. 2 hours had passed. At around 9:45 p.m., the blue dot finally started moving again. It took a meandering route back towards our side of town, eventually pulling into our driveway just after 10:15 p.m. A few minutes later, I heard the back door open, Lisa calling out, "I'm home." Class ran a little long, instructor was chatty. I didn't respond immediately. I just sat there, staring at the screen, the map displaying the irrefutable digital trail of her deception. The cold, hard data versus her easy, casual lie. There was no ambiguity, no room for doubt. She had lied. boldly, blatantly. The location wasn't a random stop for gas or a forgotten errand. It was a destination, a rendezvous, every Wednesday night. The following week, driven by a morbid need for complete certainty, I checked the tracker again on Wednesday evening. Same pattern. The blue dot traveled directly to the same Bayview address, stayed for roughly 2.5 hours, then returned home. I checked the data log stored in the app, scrolling back through previous Wednesdays since I'd installed the tracker. Every single one showed the same trip, the same destination, the same extended stay. This wasn't a recent development. This had been happening for weeks, maybe months. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. The entire yoga class was a fabrication, a consistent weekly cover story for an ongoing affair. Who lived at that address? Curiosity, sharp and painful, gnawed at me. Over the weekend, during the day when Lisa was out shopping, I drove over to Bayview. Found the street, found the house number indicated by the GPS. It was unremarkable. A neat, slightly aging brick bungalow, not unlike many in Milwaukee's older neighborhoods. Tidy lawn, sensible sedan parked in the driveway. No outward signs of anything scandalous or exciting. Sitting in Maria Flores' downtown office, I laid out the story concisely, clinically, trying to keep the emotion out of my voice. I explained the history, the driving lessons, the car purchase, Lisa's growing secrecy, the tracker, the weekly visits to the Bayview address, the visual confirmation. I provided printouts of the GPS logs, highlighting the consistent pattern over weeks. Maria listened intently, her expression serious but professional. "Paul," she said when I finished, her voice direct, "this is incredibly painful, and the evidence you've gathered is compelling and, frankly, quite damning for your wife. The consistency and duration documented by the GPS logs establish a clear pattern of infidelity, not an isolated incident. The fact that she used the vehicle you provided for her independence specifically to facilitate these encounters adds a layer of, well, let's call it egregious breach of trust that judges tend not to look kindly upon." She outlined the next steps. First, secure this evidence digitally. Make multiple backups. Second, we need a clear picture of your joint and separate finances immediately. Bank accounts, investments, debts, the title to the house, the title to the car. Third, then you confront her. When you do, be calm. State your intention to divorce, and depending on the situation with the house title and Wisconsin law, either demand she leave or make arrangements for one of you to vacate temporarily while we sort things out. And, she added, her gaze sharp, I strongly advise you demand the keys to the Honda Civic back immediately during that confrontation. It's symbolically important and asserts your position regarding the misuse of what was essentially your gift. Armed with a legal strategy and the grim validation that I wasn't just imagining things, I went home to prepare for the final conversation. I chose that evening, right after Lisa returned from her fictional Wednesday yoga class. She came in humming, tossing her gym bag onto a chair, seemingly oblivious. "How was yoga?" I asked, my voice dangerously calm as I stood blocking the hallway. "Oh, good. Really stretched me out tonight," she replied breezily, reaching to give me a perfunctory peck on the cheek. I didn't move. "That's funny," I said, holding her gaze. "Because according to the tracker I put on the Civic, you weren't anywhere near the yoga studio. You spent 2 hours and 37 minutes parked on South Shore Drive in Bayview, just like you did last Wednesday, and the Wednesday before that, and the Wednesday before that." I pulled my phone out, showing her the app screen with the map and the blue dot sitting squarely at Mark Jenkins' address. "Care to explain Mark Jenkins, Lisa? Or should I just guess?" The color drained from her face faster than water down a sink. Her eyes darted from the phone to my face, wide with panic and disbelief. "Tracker? You put a tracker on my car? How could you? That's illegal. You spied on me." She seized on the method, deflecting from the substance. "Don't you dare try to make this about me," I interrupted, my voice low and hard, decades of suppressed frustration finally boiling over. "I put a tracker on the car I bought you because you were lying to me. You stood there and swore it was one mistake. You used my trust, my sacrifice, my hard-earned money, represented by that goddamn car, as your personal taxi service to screw around with some stranger every single week. Did you ever stop to think about that while you were driving over there? Did you ever feel a shred of guilt?" She started to crumble, the accusations hitting their mark. "Paul, I don't know. I was confused, lonely." The excuses sounded pathetic, desperate. "Save it," I cut her off. "I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear any more lies." I held out my hand, palm up. "Give me the keys to the Civic. Now." She stared at my outstretched hand, then down at the keys dangling from her fingers. Tears started streaming down her face again, but this time they held no power over me. "Paul, please." "The keys, Lisa." My voice was flat, unyielding. The divorce, guided by Maria Flores, was emotionally brutal but legally straightforward. The GPS data was irrefutable proof of ongoing adultery. Lisa's initial attempts to paint herself as the wrong party, "he spied on me," fell flat in mediation when confronted with the sheer volume and consistency of the tracking data. Her lawyer quickly pivoted to negotiating the financial settlement. Wisconsin is a marital property state, meaning assets acquired during the marriage are generally split 50-50. However, Maria argued effectively that Lisa's egregious conduct and the specific circumstances, particularly the misuse of the car bought through my significant sacrifice, warranted consideration. We fought hard over the house, which I had owned prior to the marriage, but had significantly invested marital funds into maintaining and improving over 15 years. We also argued about the value of the Honda Civic itself. In the end, we reached a settlement. I kept the house, buying out Lisa's calculated share of the marital equity accumulated, which was less than a straight 50-50 split would have yielded due to concessions made in light of her conduct. The Honda Civic, now a toxic symbol, was valued, and that value was factored into the settlement. Effectively, I bought her out of her share of the car she had defiled, as I refused to let her keep it. She walked away with enough cash to start over somewhere else, but significantly less than she likely expected. No alimony was awarded. The first thing I did after the divorce was final. I drove the blue Honda Civic straight to a dealership and traded it in. Didn't even haggle much on the price. Seeing it drive off the lot felt like shedding a heavy, dirty skin. I bought myself a used, reliable pickup truck. Something practical, something for me, something for hauling lumber, something utterly unconnected to her. Life is quieter now. The house feels large sometimes, the silence occasionally heavy. Recovering from that depth of betrayal isn't a quick fix. There are nights the anger flares up again, the sense of being profoundly used and foolish. Trusting someone new feels like a distant, maybe impossible prospect right now. But mostly I find solace here, in the workshop. The feel of the wood under my hands, the precision required, the satisfaction of creating something solid and true from raw materials. It's grounding. It's honest. Frank comes by often. We watch the Packers games, maybe grab a beer. My work is steady, my reputation solid. I'm rebuilding, slowly, carefully. I learned a hard lesson about trust, about kindness, about how gifts freely given can be twisted and weaponized. You can teach someone to drive, give them the keys to freedom, but you can't control where they steer their life or their car. The betrayal left scars, deep ones. But like the wood I work with, scars don't necessarily mean weakness. Sometimes they just show where you've healed, where you've learned, and where you've become stronger. The workshop smells like pine again tonight. And for the first time in a long time, it feels like peace.